Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk about a court case and the court system and ghosts. I know this is a very different kind of subject in some ways, apart from the ghosts. But it's not a court case that's in the news or anything. This is actually the story I read this last week on YouTube Live of the trial for murder by Charles Dickens. It's also known as Taken with a Grain of Salt, or To Be Taken with a Grain of Salt. I think what's interesting about it is it's a court drama and it's a ghost story. And in it, the narrator is recounting a procedure of a court case, of a trial, that he is summoned as a jury member. He's actually the leader of the jury. I forget what that's called. And he has also seen visions of the man on trial for murder. He saw him with another man who happens to be the man who was murdered. Not only that, the ghost of the man who was murdered keeps visiting this narrator. And he starts to drift around through the jury proceedings. As you know, jury members can't go and see the outside world. They're generally locked up together, and they have to make their decisions based on the evidence that is presented in the trial and all of that stuff. So everything is kind of going in its own mundane way, even though murder is not mundane. But it is very interesting how a trial must make everything mundane in a murder. And the way this story is he's presenting everything as soullessly as he can. That's kind of the interesting part of the story. He's almost being it's like vivisection, where he is just cutting everything up and trying to present it as neutrally and devoid of spirituality as possible, because he's coming off as credible as possible. And that is, I think, what is a really cool device that Charles Dickens is doing. Remember, at this time in the 19th century, ghost stories are kind of a newer thing to civilized and elite society, or all society. I mean, who doesn't love a ghost story? So he's presenting this argument of this legal case, this trial for murder, and the title being called To Be Taken with a Grain of Salt. He's not saying this was a ghost, full on. It's kind of like these days, you could really believe what you see or know some things about what you see, but sometimes when you're presenting what happened, maybe it's in the news, you still want to try to present as many credible facts as you can, refer to the publications of the opposition, so you're just building credibility. And that's what's happening here in this story, which I think is really interesting. And as he unfolds it, he also brings up these strange occurrences of this ghost of the victim who keeps appearing to him. And he keeps hearing the evidence, as a jury member needs to. They're all locked in the room together, these 12 men. And these strange things keep happening. Like, for instance, when they keep tallying the votes and counting the different decisions of each member, they keep coming up with 13 votes. And there are 12 of them. He gives it over to one of the subordinates, and they're surprised that he asks, but then that man counts as well. And then he says, that's strange. There are 13, but we are 12, And then there is the question of jurors who are maybe on the take. And this ghost keeps appearing at random places, but notably around these three questionable jury members. And they're trying to blend in and sabotage the trial. And he is able to actually request all the things that they're questioning. The ghost is also looking over the judge's shoulder, and every time the ghost appears, he feels this crazy cold shudder that happens, and he winds up eventually, I think there's a witness who winds up fainting because the ghost appears near her. This ghost can come up to you. You don't see the ghost, but it can affect how you are affected by the environment. It could change the air. You pass out, you get sweaty. There are people who try to push the prosecution, or the defense tries to push some certain idea, some strange theory that the victim maybe cut their own throat, and when this ghost appears near them, this lawyer starts to sweat, starts to stutter, starts to lose what they're talking about. And only this narrator can see this ghost happening to people. And there is this point where at the end of the story, they reach this guilty verdict. And I should point out that the man on trial for murder, as soon as this man was selected, flips out when he sees this man for whatever reason. He didn't want this man to be on the jury, but he mutters something once the sentence is cast. And the papers say that it had something to do with he knew the hangman's noose was around his neck as soon as this man, the narrator, was selected for the jury. And it's a wonderful little ghost story that Charles Dickens wrote, The Trial for Murder. And I think what's really fascinating about it is the drama that happens in a trial, that everything is about picking things apart. The lawyers have their different dances that they do to find what the truth is, because the truth, science, all these things, they're dynamic. When a trial comes on, you have a specialist on both sides. You have experts who are called in on both sides to build a picture of this acceptable version of the truth, acceptable to enough people to either acquit or sentence, I think what was really kind of gripping to me was this idea of a court case being haunted by the deceased. When we talk about justice being served for the dead, is it that maybe the dead have some hand in that? That is something I never quite thought of. I think in some cases we do think of that when maybe it goes the way of the victim and you go, oh, that person who is not with us they had something to do with it. They were watching over us, But I think that it was so masterfully done in this because it is never really commented that was happening, that it was this force for good or something. And it is kind of left like, did that actually take place? And that is ultimately what the narrator comes to. He basically says, I'm just laying this out for you, and you think of it what you may. And that's basically all I wanted to do. And that is kind of the payoff of the stories being set that way. Anyways, I just thought it was a fascinating story by the one and only Charles Dickens, and such a different way to present a tale, though I do see some of it in the way M.R. James writes things, that you have a person who is skeptical and cynical. And I do love those old ghost stories, the way they're kind of part of the horror is a person who doesn't believe in this stuff, and they're trying to present it in a way that might be credible, but they're not going back and just freaking out. They're trying to get the better of their nerves. I love those. So maybe if you're interested, you can catch the live stream of me reading the story and tell me what you think. I'll put a link in the description. Meantime, if you liked this video, I'd love it if you just smash that like button. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.